Hare much, Gopal. Welcome everyone to our weekly Bhagavat Sravanam. It's so wonderful to have you all here today. So many known faces and so many special friends, and also so many people here who I know we have some families visiting today. Today is like an extra family day. I always say that this is our family program, like our community of devotees, like that being a family. But I feel like today it's like times 10 because we also have family of family. So you're also family. So thank you so much for being here. The flow of the day will be now we will have a talk by Dayal Gauranga for the next hour, and then we'll all stand up together and move the mats away after that, and we'll come forward and we'll have another half an hour of kirtan together. And I just want to, Dayal needs no introduction because everyone knows him and everyone loves him. And at the same time, just a tiny little brief introduction. He's our executive director here at Bhakti Center. Literally, like I know this because I work with him every day. Bhakti Center runs because of him. I have never seen someone, other than my father, because my father is also a very hard worker, but I've never seen someone in my life, I think ever, who's as dedicated and as hard worker as Dayal. Everyone tells him, make sure you take care of yourself, make sure you eat, make sure you sleep, because he just serves and serves and serves and serves, like literally like 24 hours a day, and gives his heart and his soul to Bhakti Center every single day. And literally Bhakti Center would not run without his tireless efforts, and his heart is community. He gives to community. He's been part of this project for how many years now?
2.
Yeah, right. He was a brahmachari here for like 15 years?
I got here the same time Hari Prasad was coming in to the ashram. We moved into this ashram at the same time. I was living in Laguna Beach, California, which is when I first came in contact with devotees. And I lived there for about 5 years.
Yeah.
And then I moved out here, came to visit in 2007, and then I moved into the ashram here at January of 2008. And Hari Prasad and I, we were both walking in with our sleeping bags. And I said, hey. We said, hey. And so that was 2008. So it's been about 15 years. And the Bhakti Center wasn't known as the Bhakti Center at that time. It was just a building in the ashram. And here we are.
He's going to be speaking to us today. Hari Bol.
Krishna. I have to find where we're going to be reading from today. I didn't bring my computer, so I'm on my own computer. I'm just navigating. No. Let me just find. Oops. 1 second. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Walking up the stairs, Hari Prasad's parents, and said, I came to hear you speak, and I was like, thank you for making me nervous. And so just grateful for all of you here today. It really is a family, not just this program, but just in general at the Bhakti Center. I think that, when you talk about, he's running the Bhakti Center, and really there is no running the Bhakti Center, it's us doing together. I found over the years that being able to observe many leaders do tremendous work over the years at the Bhakti Center, And being in this position now, that the idea of, in a community like this, the idea of leadership where it's just like kind of unilateral, like telling people what to do, etc., it never works. Because actually, at the end of the day, it's our inspiration which runs things. And so I find that a leader in a community like this is never somebody that's just kind of like making decisions and telling people what to do. But it really is it's really facilitating everybody else's service in a way that's as conducive as possible. And we're all trying to serve in some capacity or other. There needs to be point leadership, servant leadership. Radha Bhakti, who's here, she leads our mentorship program, and she so humbly denotes the team as the servant leadership team of that department, that area. And I really feel like all of us are in servant leadership capacities in some way, shape, or another. And so I'm really grateful for you guys giving me an opportunity to serve and be with you. And really, the Bhakti Center it's our project. And so we're all leaders as much as the other. And so this program also, I'm hoping that in our discussion today can very much be about us sharing realizations together. Oftentimes I say that and then I just speak the whole time for like an hour because it's kind of my nature to once I get going. If you ask me to speak for like 5 minutes, I'll speak for an hour. If you ask me to speak for an hour, I won't know what to say. But I really feel that Champak gave me the opportunity, and a big thank you to Champak also for restarting this program after a hiatus during world circumstances and for keeping it going. And so thank you. Something that has been on my mind a little bit that I wanted to share today, and it's from the 8th canto of the Bhagavatam, and there's a couple other places. And Champak was asking me for a title, and I shared trusting in Krishna's timing. Trusting in Krishna's timing. And I was reading a verse. I actually wanted to start from the Bhagavad Gita. But there's a number of places where Krishna's giving a very specific promise to Arjuna. And I was reading just yesterday this verse. It's from the 3rd chapter of the Gita, where Krishna's talking about the idea of karma and dharma. The idea of performing, and the word dharma gets translated in various ways. The word dharma gets translated in various ways. You have to do it when you're in leadership position. You gotta the word dharma gets translated in various ways: duty, religion, and so the first word of the Bhagavad Gita is dharma. Dhritarashtra Uvacha, dharma kshetra kuru kshetra, samaveta yuksavaha. In the place of righteousness, so it's the place of religion, place of righteousness, the place of holy place of pilgrimage. And interestingly, the last word of the Gita is also not the physical first and the actual first word of the Gita is dharma. And the actual last word is not dharma, but the last sort of word, Krishna's last word, is also dharma. Sarva dharmam parityajya, mamekam sharanam praja. So it's like in that place of dharma, and Arjuna's main dilemma is, what is my dharma? And then Krishna's describing all of these. And then interestingly, in the verse that's repeated twice, there's 2 verses repeated twice in Bhagavad Gita. Several of us know them. What are the 2? There are 2 verses repeated twice in the Gita. One very common one, man mana baba mad makto mad jaji mam namaskuru. Hare Krishna. In the early days of our movement, people were just like quote verses and nobody knew anything. So you can just say anything. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that we are not the body. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishna. Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Wow, you know so much. I'm also just learning. And so Krishna says twice in the heart of the Gita, 934. There are 18 chapters of the Gita, so there's no middle chapter. But the last verse of the 9th chapter would be considered right in the middle of the heart, like a treasure you keep very, very sacred. Interestingly enough, I was just listening to Shamananda Prabhu from Chaupati, senior brahmachari in Chaupati, and he was giving a sangha. Jenna was there for our community. Champak was there for our community group leaders at the Bhakti Center, and he was telling the story of Indrajumna Swami, the very, very, very early days of the Krishna consciousness movement, and he was in Paris. And he met somebody who was in the Navy, like a Navy captain. And, he gave him a book, and he said, our spiritual master, our guru, who translated this book, is is in town and he's giving a lecture. Would you like to come and see? And he was like, yes, of course. And he took him to Paris and he went to a program with Srila Prabhupada. And at the end, he got to meet Prabhupada. And this Navy captain was asking about the Gita, like how do we read it? You know, and Srila Prabhupada said, you can start with the 9th chapter first. Because the 9th chapter is filled with devotion, it's filled with service, it's filled with, there's a lot of sweetness there. And so it was interesting, you know, he was talking about Srila Prabhupada very much, he was quoting also one of Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers, who described bhakti as a concept of lawless love. It's just love without restriction. And so we have our rules, we have our regulations, and at the same time, we, at the end of the day, love wins. And so Srila Prabhupada is saying, okay, you have to start systematically study from the first chapter, every single verse. Like, no, you start with the 9th chapter. And so, so the 9th chapter is a very, very sweet chapter. In the heart of the Gita, the last verse is repeated twice. There's another verse that's repeated twice in the Bhagavad Gita. 338. Yes, 338. What is verse 338? Haribol, Haribol. It is in the 3rd chapter, but it doesn't appear to be 38. It seems to be 35. Very close. Oh, I didn't know that. Shrayan Swadharmo Viguna Paradharmat Swanushtitat Swadharme Nidhanam Shraya Paradharmo Bhaya Vaha. Word dharma is 4 times in every single line. Krishna repeats this verse later on in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So this word dharma, Krishna's first word in the Bhagavad Gita, spoken by Dhritarashtra, the last instruction by Krishna to give up all dharma. And Arjuna himself is so confused about his dharma, and Krishna is described, you must perform your dharma. It's better to do your dharma. So we have the Bhagavad Gita is giving us insight into the various nuances of the word dharma. And we have our conditional dharma, which is our dharma in this life, the particular psychophysical nature in which we've been given and in which we've adopted and taken on due to past karma that we've absorbed in this life, that it's sort of like the framework, the tools that Krishna's giving us in order to operate and achieve transcendence and make our offering, and which should be honored, and Krishna's encouraging that. And we also have our Nitya Dharma, which is beyond this life and which is not conditional upon anything material, which we all share, which is Jivara Swarupa Krishna Nitya Das. Krishna explains to Sanatana Goswami when Sanatana Goswami asks the question, who am I? He says, I'll tell you who you are. You're eternal spirit soul. And so we're all eternal servants of Krishna. And so this word Dharma. And then interestingly enough, the Bhagavatam, which is like a graduate study of Bhagavad Gita, begins also with the word Dharma, with the first instruction. Savai Pungsang Paro Dharmo. What is it? Savai Pungsang Paro Dharmo. Yato Bhaktir Hoksajay, Ahiktigiyat Yapratiyata, Yayatmasu Prasidati. It's always good to have a resident scholar in the audience to back you up. You know, don't you wish there are certain devotees you wish you could just carry around in your pocket? It's that verse, quick. And so this idea of Dharma. So the 3rd chapter of the Gita very much is describing this idea of Dharma and engagement activities, and Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to engage the world according to his Dharma. And as devotees, it's so important for us to also recognize that in our life, and also how we guide and instruct and give advice to others, whether it be in our families or in our work or if we're in a mentorship or leadership position, or even just with our friends, that our lives aren't meant to look the same. I think it's one of the hardest challenges that we experience as individuals, devotees or non-devotees. We live in a world of constant comparison. It's just built into to this fabric of our society today. I was with my wife. She's not here. She's in Jersey right now visiting her family, and she was here at the Bhakti Center last Thursday, and somebody came up to her and said, "Oh, I like your Instagram page." And she posts whatever she posts on Instagram, recipes and reels and stuff. And she's like, it's so interesting. He said, it's so much more meaningful for somebody to actually come up and tell you that in person than to get like a little tap. You know, like you can get like 100 little taps, and it doesn't mean that something has physical person coming up and telling you something like, I appreciate you, or I like you, or something like that. But we live in this world where we've just gotten used to this just like digital display. This is my life, and tell me if it's worth it, or something like that. So we compare so much, and that can follow us into devotional life very easily also. Are you initiated? When did you get initiated? When did you join the ashram? How many years did you spend in the ashram? You know, what time do you wake up? How many rounds do you chant? What time do you study? What programs do you go to? You know? And so if there's this whole kind of sense of just like, gotta keep up with appearances, keep up with Joneses, and we think like, oh, this person's the same age as me, and they started coming into bhakti around the same time as me, and therefore like, I should be like where they at in their spiritual life. Why am I behind? And it's so easy for us to compare and think about where we are. Whether it's in our marriage, whether it's in our sadhana, whether it's in our service, whether it's in our leadership, or lack of leadership, or problems in our marriage, or difficulties in our sadhana. And we somehow get to a place of feeling that where I'm at in my life now is somehow informed by where somebody else is in their life. And one of the hardest things for us to do as we try to mature in spiritual life and grow in our spiritual life is to learn how to really put all that noise aside. Appreciate where other devotees are. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave the 2 prescriptions for achieving perfection in spiritual life, which was chant the holy names, and he said to do something, chant the holy names, and he said don't do something else. Never criticize Vaishnavas. And so we should appreciate other people. We should encourage other people and celebrate other people. I've also heard that sometimes a measurement of our advancement in spiritual life is like a barometer, is our ability and willingness to appreciate the spiritual successes of others. It's almost like a muscle that we flex. It's hard because sometimes appreciating somebody else feels like the inverse part of that, like the inverse scale is appreciating somebody else, feels like a deprecation to myself. Feels like I'm taking something away from me. It reminds me of where I'm not at. But when you read so much of Vedic literatures, especially when you read the biographies and stories of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, you hear about Rupa Goswami and the devotees getting so much mercy, and just the celebration around that. When the devotees, Kal Krishna Das, who was rejected by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for his deviation, and the devotees were trying to find some way to engage him in service, and they gave him the service of going back to Bengal and informing Sachimata and the devotees there of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, and they were just like so happy and pleased that he was receiving the Lord's favor. Or Prataparuja Maharaj, that the Lord refused to give him audience because he was a king, and there was a social restriction against that. And the devotees were just like trying to find ways to bring him into Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's company. And when the Lord finally received and accepted the king, they were just so jubilant and happy. And you find these stories of people just celebrating each other. Chaitanya Charitamrita is like one just big celebration of devotees just being happy, seeing other devotees become happy in their Krishna consciousness. And so this barometer of being able to be happy to see other devotees succeed and grow in spiritual life. And so we should be happy. We should celebrate the successes of others, and we should hold space and exercise tremendous radical acceptance for people and their struggles. But we shouldn't use that as a barometer of where I am supposed to be. Because I'm on my own eternal journey, not even in this life, but in so many lifetimes ago. There was somebody I was thinking about who has somebody that has achieved tremendous success in their life. And somebody was saying, like, from an astrologer, like, when you see somebody who's like achieving such a high level of success, they should understand, like, that's like lifetimes in the making. That's like a desire and a cultivation and like lifetimes in the making that is fructifying in a given situation. And we just think like, I was supposed to work harder in college. You know, it doesn't always work that way. Like, we are on our own ongoing journey back home, back to Krishna's lotus feet. And Krishna, I'm bringing back to this promise, Krishna's promise to us of his being there with us. So this idea, the reason I'm starting in the third chapter, there's another verse that I'm going to ask our local pundit to remind me when I get there where that verse is in the Gita. That Krishna's talking about the idea of performing our duties and our natures. And Krishna says even here in verse 22, O son of Pritha, Arjuna, there is no work prescribed for me within all three planetary systems. Nor am I in want of anything, nor have I need to obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in prescribed duties. For if I've ever failed to engage in carefully performing prescribed duties, O Partha, certainly all men would follow my path. The word he's using there is his karma. His karma, if I've ever did my karma. So Krishna himself is showing that there's no need for me to be here. I've been saying this often in my morning classes, like Radha Mulidar, they're not here for the New York pizza. They don't even get pizza. We don't even make pizza here for them. Maybe we should sometime. Pizza and mac cheese. They're not here for the weather. They're not here for the Broadway shows. They didn't come to New York because they were sitting in Goloka Vrindavan thinking, let's take a vacation to New York. You know, let's go in the springtime. The flowers are very beautiful. We can go to that little space and where Hari Prasad takes Sachinandan Swami near the reservoir in Central Park where the cherry blossoms grow. Right? It's really, really beautiful. We don't have cherry blossoms in Vrindavan. I'd like to go. They're not here for any other reason other than fulfilling their promise to us and showing an extraordinary expression of friendship and grace and mercy and love. And they're not just here in Manhattan, Radha Mulidar. They're in Brooklyn, in Radha Govinda. They're in Jersey, in Radha Shyam Sundar. They're all over the world. It's appearing in so many places and appearing every single day, each and every one of us lives, wherever we go, and simply utter the name, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Radhe. They're with us. And so Krishna's doing his part. Krishna's doing his part. There's the other verse, where does Krishna say, declare boldly that my devotee never perishes? Where is that? Is that the 9th chapter? 931. Let's take a look at that. Chapter 9. Is it 31? True. Verse 30, 930. Apichet sutarachato is verse 30. Even if one commits the most abominable action, if they're engaged in devotional service, they're considered to be saintly because they're properly situated in their determination. They quickly become righteous and attain lasting peace, O son of Kunti. Declare boldly that my devotee never perishes. And it's interesting that Krishna's not saying, declare boldly that people on this path, that people who are performing a particular process, people who are, bhakti yogis. He particularly says, my devotees, meaning I'm looking out for you. I'm with you. I'm taking care of you. Just stay close to me. There's that story that Kastuba talks about when he was getting his new apartment during COVID. So many people shifted around and had these great deals. And like post-COVID is like revenge of the landlord. Like all the rates are like skyrocketing. And what did I do? Oh my God. But he was getting into this, and there was one, I think it was a co-op. And they were saying like, oh, like co-ops are like kind of tough because it's run by like they can decide to kind of accept you or kick you out any time. So he's getting this apartment is a really good deal, and he kind of was talking with one of like the broker or something like that, or the head of the co-op or something, and it kind of felt, it was like a real kind of like mafia scene. The guy was just kind of this accent, and he was just like, yeah. He was talking about like, well, what if I get this apartment and like the rent goes up or they decide to kick me out? And he was like, don't worry, you're with me. I'm getting you in. And he's like, I really appreciate you. Like, can I get something in writing? He's like, you don't need that. You don't need that. Like, you're with me. I will get you in. Because he was like, I really, really appreciate that a lot. But if there's something in writing, he didn't get something in writing, he got a different apartment. But that idea, like, Krishna's actually made, and he put it in writing. Krishna's saying, you're with me. So as devotees, there's this idea of Dharma and finding our way in life. And this idea of resisting the urge to compare and think that my path is meant to look like somebody else's, because it's not, because each of us are tremendously unique in our journey towards Krishna. And each of us have been given a different set of tools in a psychophysical nature, our swadharma, along with our nitya dharma. Swadharma is the word that's used in that verse that's repeated twice in the Gita, the dharma of a psychophysical nature. And Krishna even mentions that given your particular nature as a kshatriya, this is what you should do in this particular circumstance. You should fight this battle. And Krishna giving this promise that throughout the confusion, throughout the challenges, throughout the uncertainties of life, I'm going to be with you. And even when things seem, I love, one of my favorite things is from Rabindranath. Is it Tagore or Tagore? How do you pronounce his last name? Anybody know? Tagore. Tagore. Describes faith. Faith is the bird that sings in the dark moment, that feels the dawn coming, that sits in the darkness before the dawn, but feels the light and sings its song. So it's sitting in the darkness. You know, they say the darkest moment comes before the dawn. So faith is that bird that, although sitting in the lightness before the dawn, feels the light and sings. And so there's that promise of devotees remembering that, like, even in my dark moments, Krishna's light is shining. Krishna's surya sama maya hoya andhakar vichitani charitamrita. And Krishna's like the sun. And even when it's dark, I know that sun is shining. And the world is turning still. And at a certain point, the time will come for that light to shine again in my life. And so devotees carry that tremendous, tremendous faith in Krishna's timing. And in the eighth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's the story we find of the Suras and the Asuras. Prabhupada translates these terms as demons and demigods. This kind of sounds like a 1980s board game, or like Dungeons and Dragons. But really what it literally means is godly and ungodly, which also can be like what ungodly place is this, But the idea of imbibing spiritual principles, Srila Prabhupada would often use this word, godless civilization. And it's really interesting, when I think about this, we look at, you read books or watch movies or TV or whatever it is, you look out into the news, and you never have this moment of like where is God in the equation? You just can't, because there's such a politicized, controversial, we leave that all aside, but as devotees, we're just like, how could I even think about approaching this situation without having a little moment of prayer? What does Krishna want me to do in this situation? Why is Krishna doing? Even if we're asking the question, why is Krishna doing this? There's this recognition of some higher power in God in the situation. And so, simply the idea of asura and asura, godly or ungodly, is the idea of recognizing that there is a God of some form in the world that is ultimately pulling the strings in some way, and I want to align my life with that in some way. There's this great battle between the Suras and the Asuras, which in a lot of ways represents the battle that takes place in the heart of each and every one of us. And so there was this struggle, and without going into the tremendous context of the situation, the demigods, the Suras, the godly, they were sort of down and out, and they were struggling. They were losing this battle, and they approached the captain of the demigods, Lord Brahma, petitioning for advice. This is in the 8th canto, chapter 5 texts, starting text 19. Somebody want to read? Can you guys see that? Does anybody want to read out loud?
Which text?
19 through 20. Here's something else other than my voice.
Sure. Upon seeing that the demigods were bereft of all influence and strength, and that the three worlds were consequently devoid of auspiciousness, and upon seeing that the demigods were in an awkward position, whereas all the demons were flourishing, Lord Brahma, who is above all the demigods and who is most powerful, concentrated his mind on the Supreme Personality of the Godhead, Thus being encouraged, he became bright-faced, and spoke to the demigods as followers.
Beautiful. We'll pause there. Yeah, thank you. So there's a couple things taking place here. And I really want us to take a moment as much as possible, and as we're reading and as we're reflecting and as I'm speaking and hopefully create some time for sharing and discussion, that we can really find ourselves in this. I think one of the most meaningful ways to engage with Shastra and spiritual teachings is when we ask the question, where am I in this equation? Where can I find myself here? So upon seeing the demigods were bereft of all influence and strength. Sometimes I feel bereft of influence and strength. And the three worlds were consequently devoid of auspiciousness. Sometimes it feels like my life is devoid of auspiciousness. It's like we're all devotees and we're so inspired. It's like, do you know what my life is really like? Anybody have that experience? It's like we come to the program and we're on our best behavior and we see the best and we curate the best. But then it's like, what's going on under the surface of just like how life, we all have our struggles. We all have our struggles. Now everyone's wondering, what's the hell's life really like? What's he hiding? I gotta call Rasika. Dayal didn't say this directly, but he's got a dark secret that he's keeping. I need to know what it is. And upon seeing that the demigods were in an awkward position, whereas all the demons were flourishing, whereas everyone around me seemed to be making it, even my enemies. Lord Brahma, who was above all the demigods and who was most powerful, concentrated his mind on the Supreme Personality of God. Sometimes even when we come to spiritual life, it seems that the people that we left behind in material life seem to be doing better than us. You're like, wait a minute. It's like, what am I supposed to be doing here? I remember when I first met devotees and I was still living at home, and I found this new beautiful path, and I just found myself just getting into arguments with everybody all the time about it, especially with my family. And because I was so, I found the most beautiful, highest thing in the world, and it was the source of happiness, and everything was great, and yet I was just arguing with everybody about it. And at a certain point, my stepdad, I remember one time he just looked at me and said, "Aren't you supposed to be happy?" And I was like, I was like, I am. I'm moving out of the house and becoming a monk. But sometimes it feels like we just kind of, even in our spiritual life, it's almost like life gets harder, And it was just like, it seems like the more serious I take this, the more Krishna starts to grind me a little bit in the coffee grinder, And it's like I'm looking out of New York, and it's like people seem to be having a great time, And so it's like, what's the deal here? And so we seem to feel like in an awkward position. What we don't know is that because we're actually starting to turn the light on we're starting to actually open up our hearts and become willing to see the things that we didn't necessarily see about ourselves. It's a beautiful book, Yoga in the Dark Night of the Soul by Simon Haas. And he's talking about how so much of our we're just living these stories of the mind. And our friends become the people who corroborate the stories we've created for ourselves. And our enemies become the people that challenge those stories. And it's as simple as that sometimes. And that there are things, he doesn't say this in the book, but there are things that we know, right? There's a circle of things that we know. There's also a circle of things that we don't know. And in that circle of things that we don't know, there are the things that I know I don't know. But the biggest part of that circle is the things that I don't know that I don't know. And coming to spiritual life is opening ourselves up to become aware of the things that I didn't know I didn't know. About the world, about other people, and about myself. You really want to give yourself a hard time? Ask your partner or close friend, is there anything about me that I should change? That I need to work on? Is there anything about me that you think people find difficult? Ooh, that's like a big one. After they faint, they'll probably have a list of some things, And then try to see if you can listen to their answer and be like, well, no, this is it, and try to explain it away, and you're like, no, you're wrong, well, that's because of this and that and the other, and it's like, no, it's like actually just opening yourself up. And so when we come to spiritual life, it's like, I don't want to be living this false story anymore. I don't want to be living this false story anymore. And I'm willing to rewrite the script, even though I don't know how. I know how it's going to end. Krishna's giving that promise. But I don't know the steps to get there. And sometimes I wonder even if I'm going to make it to the end of the story. And so we find ourselves in this place where it feels like I've lost my influence and strength. And Arjuna brings up this very thing in the Bhagavad Gita also. Like, what happens to somebody who's given up material life, taken to spiritual life, and they fail at that too, and they got nothing? I gave up my material life, I'm struggling in my spiritual life, and I'm like a riven cloud caught between two places. I don't have a foot in either place. We feel that way sometimes. Because I no longer have the grounds of being in which I made sense in my life before, and I'm moving into a new arena. Bereft of influence and strength, the three worlds were completely devoid of auspiciousness. And upon seeing that the demigods were in an awkward position, whereas all the demons were flourishing, Lord Brahma, who was above all the demigods and who was most powerful, concentrated his mind in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, being encouraged, he became bright-faced and spoke to the demigods as follows. Where's another example of somebody being in a completely, utterly confused, seemingly hopeless situation of life, in a puddle of anxiety and depression, taking it to somebody and they just smile at him? I see some heads nodding back there. Arjun. What is your name, sir? Rupanuga. Thank you so much, Rupanuga Prabhu. So much. Krishna. Wow. I thought there was something sitting between George and Hari Prasad. Yeah. And so Radhabhakti's dead. Radhabhakti's proud of you, sir. She's smiling big up here. Now she's telling me she hates me. And so Krishna smiles. Because even though everything seems to be falling apart materially, he knows it's all coming together spiritually. Text 21, Lord Brahma said, I, Lord Shiva, all of you demigods, the demons, the living entities born of perspiration, the living beings born of eggs, the trees and plants sprouting from the earth, and the living entities born from embryos, all of it, everything, come from the Supreme Lord and is incarnation of Rajagun, Lord Brahma, the Guna avatar, and from the great sages, rishis, who are part of me. Let us therefore go to the Supreme Lord and take shelter of his lotus feet. For the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no one to be killed, no one to be protected, no one to be neglected, and no one to be worshipped. Nonetheless, for the sake of creation, maintenance, and annihilation, according to time, he accepts different forms as incarnations, either in the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, or the mode of ignorance. Now is the time, trusting in Krishna's timing, right? Now is the time to invoke the mode of goodness of the living entities who have accepted material bodies. The mode of goodness is meant to establish the Supreme Lord's rule, which will maintain the existence of the creation. Therefore, this is the opportune moment to take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because he is naturally very kind and dear to the demigods, to the Suras, to the devotees. He will certainly bestow good fortune upon us. There again is Krishna's promise. Promise he gave to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. Promise that he's giving to us now. What's the evidence of that promise? They're standing right there. You can chant his names. You can chant her names. It's being told to us in the Shastra by Krishna's devotees themselves. By Queen Kunti, by Bhishma Dev, by Prahlad Maharaj, by Ambarish Maharaj, by Brahma himself. Will certainly bestow that good fortune upon us. It's just a matter of our timing. And how even in sometimes the most challenging of situations, I think things aren't coming together. Well, maybe they're just not supposed to be coming together right now the way I think they are. And so much of our faith and so much of our struggle in spiritual life is because we simply might just have a different sense of timing than Krishna. And where do I go and how do I take the opportunity, rather than thinking that things need to be different than how they are right now? What can I do to take care of myself physically, materially, emotionally, and spiritually, as I try to align myself with Krishna's timing in my life. And in the next chapter, I won't quote it because I don't have the verses prepared, but in the next chapter, when they go to Krishna, and they go to Vishnu, and they make that petition, Krishna says the same things. Now's not your time. Now's not your time right now. Make a truce. Kind of smooth things out until the right moment comes for you to make your next move. And so I think that for us, sometimes as devotees, I saw a meme the other day, and it was like, sometimes this is what resilience looked like. And I had a picture of somebody like crawled into like a what do they call it? The fetal position, like on the ground next to a roll of toilet paper, like just getting through the day, you know? And so for each of us, sometimes courage means just getting through the day and making it through the next day. Sometimes it looks brilliant and beautiful and jubilant. And each of us are going to have both those types of days and everything in between. But the most foundational hallmark of a devotee is that they believe in Krishna's promise, and no matter how ugly, no matter how rough, no matter how bumpy, no matter how turbulent, or beautiful, or transformational, or sweet and sunshiny and amazing life gets in between, I'm trusting in the divine ultimate plan of Krishna in my life and in everyone's life. There was a movie quote that everything's going to be great in the end. If it's not great, then it's not the end. And so this idea of trusting in Krishna's timing, and for us as a community of devotees, to believe that for each other, and to remind ourselves of that, and to learn to hold space for each other, and withhold judgment of people's struggles, to not judge people based off of the externals of where they seem to be at, and to allow ourselves a little bit of grace as we move through the process. Srila Prabhupada said to chant and be happy. And there are different ways of looking at that instruction. One is to chant and be happy as a result of chanting. But I am chanting, and the happiness is not always coming. In fact, I'm very angry at you right now. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. I still feel very angry at you. To chant and also situate yourself in a way that you can be happy, so that you can continue your chanting. Because if you're not, then it'll be easy to, in the Sangha this morning with Sravanam Prabhu, one of the takeaways was, don't serve prasad when you're hungry. Meaning making sure that you, in order to serve, you got to make sure that your cup is a little bit full at least. You know, Srila Prabhupada said once, it was in a museum, that a hungry person can't appreciate art. How can you appreciate these finer aspects of life if like you're struggling on such a foundational and physical level? And so the idea of giving us a little bit of grace and what that looks like for me may be very different. And at the end of the day, ultimately, I recognize you don't have to justify, you know, whatever material aspirations and comforts, etc., that we need, but we should also be able to know, like, at the end of the day, all the pieces are going back in the box. We know that. At the end of the day, all the pieces go back in the box, and we move on from this life. This story ends, and we move on to the next chapter. We don't take anything with us other than our devotion. But for this time in my life, this might be what I need in order for me to continue on in my devotional service. And that's the hallmark, is keeping our devotional service, the flame of our devotional service alive. Just enough that Krishna can fan it at the right time. At the right time. And so trusting in Krishna's timing, leaning into that and getting those reminders and reminding each other is an extraordinarily important part of our spiritual life and builds our faith, and where our faith rests on. It's Krishna's promise in the Gita, it's Krishna's promise in the Bhagavatam, and it's Krishna's promise to us every day when we chant the holy names, or when we take darshan of the deities, or when we see a devotee. So I'd like to open up for questions or discussion. So we have about 15 minutes left. If anybody would like to, welcome, thanks for coming in. If anybody would like to share reflection, just speak something back that you heard that stuck out to you. or ask a question. Would love to hear from you. Yes, Hari Prasad. Thank you. I was hoping you, and I'm also hoping that you'll lead the Arti Kirtan, but I don't want to put you on the spot. But I will since you raised your hand.
Krishna, Krishna. No, thank you so much. So you were talking about potentially needing to give our mind some peace by taking something that is lesser than pure bhakti to get us through to the point where we develop pure bhakti. Is that
Very well.
correct?
It's very well put. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So that certainly I have seen to be true. But how do we know that we're not selling ourselves short? How do we know when that is true versus when we're actually creating a self-limiting belief?
That's a great question. And I'll answer this for everybody else because I think I've never known you to ever sell yourself short. And you probably push yourself harder than anybody that you know. So I trust that you actually are asking for a friend. But I think that there's a couple of things. I mean, that's why we have Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. We have gurus in our life, Shiksha and Diksha gurus that are really, really important. And we have Shastra. We know where we want to go. And so it's important for us to know that we're moving there. And so there's always that pushing the envelope and growing. So we're always meant to be growing, not becoming complacent. So a very, very short answer to your question would be to ensure that we have Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra in our life. And then a little bit more of a personal question is that at the end of the day, and this is just sort of like me, just kind of me speaking, and like how I go about that and how I deal with that with other people. Like I'm a person, like I don't really do well, like I'm not a big like philosopher and like debater of like trying to get people to like understand philosophy or like trying to get you to become devotee. Because at the end of the day, it's like, it's your life. Like you gotta want this. Like you really gotta want this for yourself, and if you can go as far as you want to go. And so I think it's really up to the individual. Like we know when we're cheating ourselves. We know that. We know that by the experience of our life. Are you happy where you're at right now? If you're happy where you're at right now, by all means stay there. You know what I mean? It's like you walk into like a 12-step meeting, it's like this meeting is for people who struggle with alcohol. Well, I don't have a problem with alcohol. Then you should leave. You know? And if you're happy without it, great. This is for people whose lives have fallen apart and want to put it back together. And so I think that if someone's under this pretense of like, I don't need Krishna, I don't need to push myself, great. God bless you. You know? But I know what I need, and I know that I'm not happy where I'm at. I know that this like these vices and this like depending on the crutch of these like various material comforts leaves me hanging. And I might use it for now, but like I know I need to move forward. It's like that quiet gnawing at the heart that's there with us in the quiet moments. Am I really comfortable spending time alone with myself? You know, I was at a public event the other week. Isabel was there. It was at the Beacon Theater. Somebody was speaking, and they had everybody stand up, and they're like, they were trying to see like it was about spending time alone with ourselves. And they said, if anybody has spent, and they were taking these different times, like 5 hours alone with yourself in the last week without your phone. Sit down. If you spent 5 hours alone with yourself in the past week without your phone, and I'm just like, I don't know if I've done that. 5 hours alone with myself without my phone. Like maybe if and he was like, sleeping doesn't count. You know? And he was gonna say going to the bathroom doesn't count, but we bring our phones there too now. You know, and it's like you know, like sleeping doesn't count. And it was just like, I don't know if I've done that. You know? And so it's like, am I comfortable spending time alone with myself? That's a big indicator. Spend some quality time alone with yourself and see what comes up. You'll know if you're being complacent in the self-limiting belief. And have some good teachers in your life and reach out to other people and ask them, am I being complacent or am I man, it made a good spot. Ask some well-trusted friends, some teachers, spend a little bit of time alone for yourself, and I really believe that the answer will come up for you. Thank you. So if anybody else wanted to share something on that, or if you wanted to share something, Har Prasad, please go ahead. If anybody else wanted to share something else, it's open conversation. Anybody want to? Yeah, Isabel.
Yeah, I'll share something, see if I can wrap my head around it, but you brought up a lot of stuff that brought me back to when I came into Krishna consciousness, and, or found myself back in Krishna consciousness, right, which is about it the right way, but one of the
Return to
struggles-
Krishna consciousness.
one of the struggles that we have coming into Krishna consciousness, when you're having a whole other life outside of it, and we go, like you're saying, they're happier, the people that are leaving behind, but they seem so happy. So you're always kind of in this hopping in to both worlds, into, do I leave that all behind, which is really hard, but it's not serving me, and it's always hard. And I think one of the things that helped me eventually just be able to cut that out, besides saying that doesn't really serve me anymore, and I love them, but they're going one direction and my heart is going in another, was to just set your path straight. Decide already what you want to do, and then let that be your focus. So decide Krishna consciousness, and then it's Krishna, and that's it, and just focus on that and make that decision. But sometimes when we look back and say, I'm having such a good time, maybe it's because you're not fully decided yet. And that indecision could lead to a lot of the, back and forth in your heart and in your mind, and when you're seeing social media and stuff like that. And that applies too when you are in Krishna consciousness now, and you feel like, oh my God, I'm starting this so late, and then you have to do like a million things, and oh, look at him, like he's, oh, look, he's initiated, I need to be initiated, or he's serving at the temple, I need to go to India, and it was like so much in the beginning, I wanted to do it all,
Yeah.
and I tried to do it all, and I was drowning myself, and I realized I'm not even absorbed. I'm just doing, I'm not learning. I have no idea what I'm doing, I'm just doing it because I feel like I have to catch up. So I applied the same thing. Make a decision already. Where do you want to be in this path? And I want to be in absorption of Krishna consciousness. And then everything started to get easier, and the anxiety to be like somebody else who's in the path, like you, whatever. Like, no, it didn't happen anymore. So I created this protective circle around me to say, this is what I want. This is my goal. Once I get there, then I take the next step. And the next step is where I need to be in this lifetime. And so just making that decision and sticking with it and following it, that's like to me like my savior in this whole thing, being decisive.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. There's these two words in Sanskrit, Shreyas and Preyas. And I forget which one is which, but one of them refers to the idea of our immediate good, and the other refers to our ultimate good. Pranuga Prabhu, do you know which one is which?
Shreya is long term, Priya is
Yes, I thought so, but I didn't want to embarrass myself. Because it's quite interesting. What is the verse where Arjuna surrenders to Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita?
2:7.
2:7, right? What's the verse? A little louder, Har Prasad. That Krishna is asking, Arjuna is asking, now I'm confused about my duty, and I've lost all composure because of my weakness. In this condition, I'm asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I'm your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you, please instruct me. So all the pieces are there, Har Prasad's question. Willingness to open myself up. Ask somebody else, is there something I'm not seeing about myself? And ask the question, what is my, and what's our word? Shreyas. My ultimate good. And so this juxtaposition of my immediate good and my ultimate good. And so somebody once gave a definition of sacrifice is doing what I don't want to do now so that I can do what I want to do later. And so sometimes when we come to spiritual life, we have to remind ourselves that some people that's because they're engaging in prayer. They're just like their immediate good. The immediate good, that cheesecake that's in my fridge, that like ex that I know I shouldn't be returning their call, that email that I know is like, I'm hitting send, but it's really a detonate button. They're just about to launch into somebody's inbox and like regret and like undo quickly before they see it. Like, what's that deleted message in WhatsApp? Like, never mind about that. Like, WhatsApp, do you need to put that there was a deleted message there? Like, that defeats the whole point, you know? And so, the ultimate, the urge, you know, the first verse of the Upadeshamrita, the nectar of instruction, talks about Vacho Vegam, Manasakroda Vegam. This word Vegam means like, a Virgin Prabhu translated it once as push, these pushes, the urges, just like push to say something, push to eat something, push to grab something. And so it's resisting those urges that immediate good for my long-term good, for my shreyas. What is the ultimate good? And so as devotees, we have to remind ourselves of that also. That what is that ultimate good? And so we also have to keep ourselves like, sometimes we're on different tracks with people that don't share our values. We have to stop looking for advice and direction from people who don't share our values. You know? And the way that life is situated for us is that all of a sudden, everyone's opinion all of a sudden becomes like equally important. Right? Anyone with an email account now has the ability to share an opinion that all of a sudden somehow is equally valuable to anybody else. Right? Like a comment can ruin my day. Why? Like, why does that person's comment matter? All of a sudden, like, everyone's opinion becomes equally valuable in my life. And once everybody has equal opportunity to share voice, and like everybody inherently is equally valuable, but everyone's opinion should not have equal weight in my life. But somehow we've done that. We've just done that. We've just given everybody the keys to our heart and to our self-esteem and to our influence. And it's like being a lot more careful about who I take my cue from. Is it just mainstream culture? Is it the news? Is it just whatever pops on my feed? Is it whoever's standing out front of Little Frankie's when I leave the Bhakti Center on a Thursday night after Kirtan? You know? And so we also take very, very careful stock of who we choose to allow to influence us. Is also really, really important. And that changes as we move through, even in the stages of our devotional life, in the later years of our devotional life. The beginning years of devotional life, it may be a certain somebody or different people. In the middle years and the later years, it shifts, it changes. Because we changed. I'm married now. There's Satyaraj Prabhu is here, maybe he's in the back. You can hear us, we love you, Satyaraj Prabhu. When I first got married, he was like, you need to have good teachers in your life. And make sure they're not all sannyasis. You know? And so it's like, you gotta have people in your life that change, you know, whatever it may be. Yeah, Radha Bhakti.
I just was really appreciating your class a lot, and this point about how everything has its right time. We were just reflecting last night on Srila Prabhupada's life himself. And,
Yeah.
I'm reading right now Swami in the Strange Land, and it's just, I don't know, I've read so many biographies, but this one, for some reason, really hits me in terms of how much Prabhupada was struggling prior to coming to the West after separating from his family. He had an apparently, failed business and failed marriage and failed relationships, and he was skipping breakfast every day to save a few cents to get paper to print his magazine, and then he printed the magazine and then was distributing it and was being yelled at by people. I mean, he could have easily felt that, I'm on the right side of things. Why is this not working? I'm part of Krishna, why are you blocking me? And I just relate to that feeling a lot, like, why are you blocking me, Krishna, in my service? I think I'm trying to do the right thing. Why would you block this and not, you know what I mean? And not that person, to your point, like just feeling that comparison thing. So I was actually reflecting on this point recently, and so I feel like it's Krishna just like making that message hit home that like, there's a time for everything, and if it feels inauspicious now, like it will pass.
Yeah.
And we have Prabhupada's life as an example of that, of just, he could have given up. Imagine if he gave up, we wouldn't be sitting here.
And I think it's remembered to that he wanted to give up at times. We had this beautiful program on Wednesdays at 2nd Avenue. We just read from Prabhupada stories. And there was one story where Prabhupada, I love that so much, I can speak forever and share and hear forever about Prabhupada's example, because it's so true. I mean, even failed spiritual endeavor, like Interfaith League of Devotees in India, he started was before the movement here. It's like it didn't go anywhere. And so Prabhupada wanted to buy a building initially in Upper Manhattan. He couldn't get funds from India. They were ready to sell it to him, and there was money that they were ready to send to him, but the government wouldn't allow the money for some legal transaction. They couldn't send the money, and he was like, he wrote in his diary that he never thought anyone. He was like, I'm mortified. So that was the word he used. I'm mortified. And so, but there was this story of Prabhupada, real briefly because we're running out of time, where one devotee, they were having trouble controlling their senses, so Prabhupada gave them a special diet. And then the devotees were like, oh, I want the same thing. Like, they're kind of, how do I control like my tongue, like my eating, like I'm just out of control. And Prabhupada said, his first response was like, he gave them some spiritual advice, like you control the tongue through chanting and through praying and etc. Prabhupada said, I know it's hard. He said, I have a tongue too. And I thought it was so sweet. Like Prabhupada is a human. He struggled and he had his feelings of challenges, of doubts, of wondering, and his so much. Prabhupada was gored by a bull in Vrindavan trying to distribute back to Godheads and print Bhagavatams. You know what I mean? I stubbed my toe on the way to the temple. I think Krishna doesn't want me to go. It's like, why is this happening? I missed the train. It's like, well, Krishna, couldn't you? I'm going to the Bhakti Center. Like, couldn't you make the trains run? This train is not operating on the R line. It's like, Krishna! Prabhupada was gored by a bull. And so it's such a beautiful meditation. And thank you for bringing that example so much. Thank you. I could go on, but I want to open up. If there's any other discussions or sharings or questions or reflections.
I just wanted to add to what you were saying. So last summer, Mahatma was here, and he was talking about Prabhupada and all his challenges and difficulties. And so many times, his heart wanted to give up. But the only reason and the only thing that kept him going was enthusiasm. And that's what, I think that's what keeps me going, that I feel enthusiasm with this path, with Krishna, with everything that he did. And then everyone else here just keeps me enthusiastic.
Srila Prabhupada, Krishna writes in this verse, the previous verse that we described, where Krishna says, declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. To follow from the previous verse, that's also oft quoted in the Bhagavad Gita, Abhichet Sutaracharo, Bhajatemam Ananyabhak Sadhu Eva Samantavya, Samyag Vyavasito Hisaha. This idea that even if one commits the most abominable action, durachara, a horrible activity, if we stumble, if we fall, if we bumble, if we're struggling, but we're engaged in devotional service, we're considered to be saintly because of being properly situated in our determination. Samyag Vyavasito Hisaha. And interestingly enough, this word is also very much used in the very beginning of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is talking to Arjuna about the idea of being focused in our spiritual life. And Srila Prabhupada very much took this verse to heart. There's a description, I think it's 241, Vyavasa Yatmaka Buddhir. Vyavasa being like resolute, focus. This word Vyavasa Yatmaka Buddhir, this one-pointed intelligence is also mentioned here. Vyavasito Hisaha, being situated in our determination, not being detracted, not wavering, not in our performance. Our performance is going to be all, this whole verse is about, your performance is going to be all over the place. Don't give your report card based off of your performance, because that's going to be like needs improvement, like every day. A for effort, needs improvement. And Krishna's like, just bring that effort every day. That Vyavasyatmaka Buddhir, Eke Hakurananda, Samyak Vyavasto, to be situated in our determination. And Krishna will take care of the rest. So thank you so much, Kula, for your wonderful, beautiful service. Thank you all so much for being here. I love you all. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Srila Bhagavatam Ki Jai.
Come forward, we'll move these.
Where's my prasad? Is my prasad going to come in Kirtan?
Dayal, you should leave, really. I would love for
I just spoke forever. People are done with my voice.
Never. Never.
When do we get to hear Har Prasad and Kirtan?
I've been to before, I think sometimes. Yeah.
Coming. Jai Shri Ram.
Shri Radha Murli Gaura Chandra ki
Jai.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine
Namo Vishnu Padaya
Hare Krishna,
Jaya Krishna Paramahamsa Parabhajikacharya Sadhguru Sadhguru Shivanand Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Krishna Paramahamsa Parabhajikacharya Sadhguru Sadhguru Shivanand Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namachar Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Mayapur Navadvip Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Jamuna Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Kali Yuga Dharma Harinam Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Itai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the devotees. All glories to the devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Praladadadayine. Praladadadayine. Hiranyakashipurvashaha. Kashipu,
for coming. We have this every Sunday, and next Sunday, we're actually having a 3-day festival because a week from tomorrow is the appearance day of Lord Chaitanya.
Haribo.
And so on this coming Saturday, which is March 4th, we're going to be having a festival from 4 to 7 p.m. called Roots of Kirtan, and it's going to have kirtan and a talk and an abhishek and offerings of coconuts and then a feast. And then on Sunday, we're going to be having a special Bhagavat Sravanam given by Rasanath Prabhu on Lord Chaitanya. I'm looking at Hari Prasad because this is his best friend.
Johnny's going to speak on Saturday.
Yeah, Johnny Harrison's going to speak on Saturday for the Roots of Kirtan Festival. And then on Monday, we're going to have another festival on the actual day of, and that is going to be in the evening time from 6:30 to 9 p.m., which is going to include kirtan and abhishek and a talk by Jagannath Priya Das, a brahmachari from Chowpatty. So please come for all of them. Also, if you're interested in doing service, we're particularly looking for service for Monday.
And Saturday.
Oh, it's still Saturday too, okay. Okay, so you can come see me if you would like to do service. And also, we have a temple WhatsApp where we send out a daily, we have a weekly newsletter once a week. You can sign up for that on the bottom of Bhakti Center website by scrolling down to the bottom and clicking on Join Our Temple Newsletter. And then the temple WhatsApp is like the exact same thing that's on our temple newsletter, but like a daily, like one thing. And if you want to join that, you can come see me. And we also have community groups happening at Bhakti Center. If you know people who are more new to the practice and they're interested in joining a beginning bhakti, we have a beginning bhakti, I believe, starting on Wednesdays with Gaur Sharan very, very soon on our website if you click on beginning bhakti. We also have a home program initiative. If you're interested in being in a home program with other devotees or joining a home program, you can see myself. I organize those. And we have a lovely feast for you served in the back. So please stay, leave a donation if you can. And take prasadam in the back and make a friend or keep a friend or be with your family. And if you'd like to help clean up afterwards, you can also see me or see the lovely 2 devotees who are serving prasadam who are on our team. And if you're interested, last thing, I know I'm kind of saying lots of things here. If you're interested in doing service for this program regularly, you can also come see me. So thank you all so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
But you're standing here and playing and singing with me.
Hey, I know I still need to